You just logged into your 401k. The balance is higher than last year. Your contribution percentage hasn't changed since the day you were hired. Every advisor you've ever listened to has told you the same thing. Max it out, don't touch it, let it compound. So you keep doing exactly that, but somewhere between your first paycheck and your last, that advice quietly stops being true. Not because saving is bad, because the account that built your wealth is also, secretly, building a tax bill you haven't priced in yet. Here's the part almost nobody explains at open enrollment. Every dollar you put into a traditional 401k is not fully yours. It's yours, and the government's, split at a rate that hasn't been decided yet. You get a deduction today. The IRS gets its share later, whenever you withdraw, taxed as ordinary income, at whatever rate exists decades from now. You are not avoiding the tax. You're postponing it and making a bet that your future tax rate will be lower than your current one. For most of your working life, that bet is a good one. You're earning less than you will be at your peak. Your balance is small, and compounding needs time more than it needs tax efficiency. But the bet changes shape as the account grows. And this is where Ed Slott comes in. Slott is a CPA who has spent over 3 decades studying retirement account taxation, and he calls what happens next the retirement savings time bomb. The title of his own book on the subject. His argument is simple. The same feature that makes a 401k attractive, while you're contributing, tax deferral, becomes a liability the moment you're forced to withdraw. And you will be forced. The IRS requires it through what's called a required minimum distribution, or RMD, a mandatory withdrawal amount that increases every year you're alive, whether you need the money or not. Under the Secure Act 2.0, passed in 2022, that forced withdrawal now starts at age 73, climbing to 75 by 2033. It sounds far away. It isn't, for the math involved. If you've spent 30 years maxing out a 401k, your balance at 73 isn't a modest nest egg. For a disciplined saver, it can easily be 7 figures. The RMD formula pulls a percentage of that balance out every single year, and that withdrawal is added directly to your taxable income, right alongside any pension, part-time work, or Social Security you're also collecting. Which brings in a second name worth knowing. David Blanchett, a retirement researcher who has published extensively on tax diversification and what's called asset location, where you hold different types of savings, so you owe the least tax possible over your lifetime. Blanchett's research keeps landing on the same point. Investors who hold all their savings in one tax bucket, usually traditional pretax accounts, tend to pay significantly more in lifetime taxes than investors who spread savings across pretax, Roth, and taxable accounts. Not because they earned less, because they gave themselves no flexibility in how or when to realize income. Let's make this concrete. Because abstractions don't move money, numbers do. Picture 2 investors. Both earn $90, deals on a year, starting at 30. Both contribute 15% of their salary to retirement, every year, without fail, for 35 years. Investor 1 puts all of it into a traditional 401k. Investor 2 puts the employer match, and enough to capture every dollar of it into the traditional 401k, then redirects everything beyond that into a Roth IRA and a taxable brokerage account. By 65, both investors have accumulated roughly the same total wealth, because the market doesn't care which account it's compounding in. But investor 1 is holding almost the entire pile inside a pretax account. At 73, the RMD forces out a 6-figure withdrawal, stacked on top of Social Security. That pushes them into a higher tax bracket than they ever occupied while working. It can also trigger something few people see coming: higher Medicare premiums, through a surcharge called IRMAA, which is calculated directly off your taxable income 2 years prior. So the RMD doesn't just cost income tax. It can quietly raise your healthcare costs too. Investor 2 has options. Some income comes from the Roth, tax-free. Some comes from the taxable brokerage, taxed at lower long-term capital gains rates instead of ordinary income rates. Some still comes from the traditional account, but in a controlled amount Investor 2 chooses, instead of an amount the IRS chooses for them. Same total wealth. Very different tax outcome. Investor 2 built what planners call tax diversification, and it's the single biggest lever separating people who feel financially trapped in retirement from people who feel free in it. This is the part that sounds backwards the first time you hear it. The smartest investors don't keep maxing out their 401k forever. Somewhere in their mid to late 40s or early 50s, once they can see the shape of their eventual RMDs, many deliberately shift new savings away from the traditional 401k. Not because they stop saving. They redirect into a Roth 401k or Roth IRA, where withdrawals are tax-free forever. Into an HSA if they have one, which offers a triple tax advantage that even Roth accounts don't fully match. Into a taxable brokerage account, which offers no tax deduction today, but also no RMD, ever, and full access to the money before age 59 and a half without penalty. That last point matters more than people admit. William Bengen, the financial planner who created the 4% withdrawal rule that still shapes how most advisors think about retirement income, built his research around a problem that traditional 401k investors run straight into: sequence of returns risk. If a market downturn hits early in your retirement, and your income is coming entirely from an account you're forced to withdraw from at a fixed schedule, you can be locked into selling depreciated assets at the worst possible time. An investor with money split across taxable and Roth accounts has choices in a bad year. They can pull from cash or taxable assets instead of selling into a crash. An investor who only has a traditional 401k has far fewer places to turn. So the shift isn't about saving less. It's about recognizing that the goal was never to defer the maximum amount of tax. The goal was always to pay the least amount of tax over your entire lifetime, on the least amount of forced income with the most control over timing. Those are different goals, and a 401k that was the right tool at 28 can become the wrong tool at 55, simply because your balance, your bracket, and your timeline have all changed underneath it. There's a quieter reframe hiding inside all of this too. A big 401k balance feels like security. The number on the screen goes up, and that feels like winning. But an account you're eventually forced to drain on someone else's schedule, taxed at someone else's rate, isn't full control of your money. It's deferred obligation with your name on it. Real security isn't the size of the number. It's how much say you have over what happens to it next. The HSA piece deserves its own moment, because most people treat it like a medical expense account and nothing more. Contributions go in tax-free. Growth is tax-free. And withdrawals are tax-free too, as long as they're used for qualified medical expenses, which, by retirement, most people have in abundance. No other account offers all three. A traditional 401k gives you the first tax break and makes you pay on the back end. A Roth gives you tax-free growth but no deduction today. An HSA, quietly, gives you both. Morningstar's Christine Benz, who has written extensively on retirement withdrawal sequencing, has pointed to the HSA as one of the most underused tools in the entire retirement toolkit, precisely because people stop thinking about it once their medical bills for the year are covered. None of this means stop contributing blindly at every age. In your 20s and early 30s, the traditional 401k, especially up to your full employer match, is usually still the correct move. You're in a lower bracket now than you likely will be later, and deferring tax makes sense. while your balance is small enough to control. The shift happens later, once your account has grown large enough that its future RMDs would push you into a higher bracket than the one you're deferring from today. That's the signal, not a birthday. The moment your projected retirement withdrawals start to look bigger than your current paycheck. So check your own account today. Not just the balance, the type. How much of your retirement savings is pre-tax, forced, and taxed on the IRS's schedule? How much is Roth, taxable, or otherwise yours to control? If the answer is almost all pre-tax, that's not a mistake you made. It's the default nearly everyone is handed, and almost nobody explains when it stops serving you. You'll log into that same account again next year. The balance will probably be higher, same as always. But this time you'll know the number by itself was never the full story. What matters is who controls it when it finally comes out.